All right, so now we're back with part two, and we have Chelsea and Yamini with us. So we're just gonna have them introduce themselves. So Yamini, you can go first.
Okay. Hi, I'm Yumini. I'm in ninth grade. I'm a freshman. And I joined Leading Ladies for women empowerment and to spread awareness on certain problems.
And Chelsea?
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm a senior, and I joined Leading Ladies last year because I wanted to be a mentor to younger female scholars, and I want to spread awareness, like Yamini, on certain issues that affect the female community.
Thank you guys. So we just talked about, what sexual harassment means to us, what our definition is, what we were seeing on social media, and now we're just gonna hop into a little bit of intersectionality, being a woman, being a person of color, and if you do identify with the LGBTQ plus community, how that is impacted or how that has impacted your experiences with sexual harassment.
Okay, so yeah, like with the Me Too movement and stuff, I definitely didn't feel at home in that environment. And I felt like that was a shame because there's definitely a hypersexuality thing that kind of takes place within the Black community, and especially with young Black girls, where they're seen as hypersexual, or Black women are only seen on display in the media as super sexual beings. And that kind of causes a lot of the issues that we have, and definitely does affect the way Black men in our community or young Black boys in our community treat Black women because of the way that we are portrayed on the media. So it was like, as a Black woman, seeing it on social media recently was a different approach to the whole Me Too movement. And it was a conversation about sexual harassment, but it wasn't involved with like the entire movement of Me Too or globalized movements that take place in the media, because I feel like there's definitely a separation there.
Just to go off what Najwa said too, like the hypersexualization, especially like young Black girls, like how from like such a young age you can't do certain things, or this can just be for girls in general too. Like I know I heard like on social media or just like from other people how like if like a male family member comes over, or sometimes like even their own father, like their mothers will ask them to cover up, or like if they're wearing shorts to go put on pants, and it's just like things of that sort where it's kind of like, this is my own home. This is my personal space. This is supposed to be a family member who I can trust. So definitely that part. And also like what Naja was saying, like that intersectionality of being a person of color and being a woman, oftentimes like what you have to say and your experiences are kind of like silenced, and the point of view or the spotlight is given to another group of people. And definitely we did see that with the Me Too movement, even though the Me Too movement, I'm pretty sure, was founded by a Black woman. So just for that to happen was just kind of ironic. But it just goes to show that that intersectionality, it does definitely add more to our situation and experiences.
Just quickly, I was thinking just now, like, I was reading an article, or I feel like I was reading something on Instagram, and it was talking about intersectionality and how that like correlates to the LGBTQ community. And people were saying that there were so many like stigmas behind it, and how like maybe like the people who are in the LGBTQ community, how they can't like experience this. And I just like found that weird. So I want to know like what you guys think about that.
I feel like anyone, matter if you're straight, gay, bi, identify with any sexuality, anyone can get sexually harassed or sexually assaulted. It doesn't matter what you sexually identify as. Yeah.
It's weird because there's a boundary that sometimes gets pushed within the LGBTQ plus community, where it's like a mixture of, you don't feel like what you're doing is sexual assault because they're a member of your community, and then you feel like you can't sexually assault someone else because your sexual orientation. And it just all boils down to the same thing. Like if you're touching somebody or interacting with somebody and they're uncomfortable, it's harassment. It doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is or what gender they are, it's harassment. And I know sometimes the line can be fine, but like I said before, not everybody's your best friend. You can't touch everybody the same way you touch your best friend just because you think somebody's going to be okay with it because you're gay or because you're both two bisexual women. Doesn't, like, that's not true. You don't know that. And again, ask if it's okay. And if there's any indicator that they're uncomfortable, you should have that conversation. And like, I know some people, like, they feel bad when they hear stuff like this because they do it unconsciously. It's like, it's okay to check yourself now or to go back and apologize, because some people really do like not know because it's not talked about. But yeah, and it's more common than you think.
I completely agree with you guys, because like when I was reading it, I was so confused. I was like, you're saying just because this person is like a trans woman or a trans man, they can't go through the same thing that maybe like a cisgender woman or a cisgender man would go through. So I found that really weird. And another thing that me and Gloria were actually having a conversation about within like the LGBTQ community, and I was talking to another friend, and they were actually explaining to me that your pronouns actually don't have anything to do with your sexual orientation. And so I actually learned that was new this week, because I was talking to Gloria and I thought that if someone like referred to the pronouns of like they or there, that meant that they were queer, or that meant that they have a specific sexual orientation. So yeah, I found that like really cool that like your pronouns don't correlate with like your sexual orientation.
Okay, so we made it to our last topic, which is steps and moving forward. So I guess everyone can go around and just speak on some things on what you feel needs to be done to address sexual harassment, whether that's overall, whether it's, focusing on intersectionality in school, in the workplace, whatever the case may be.
Something that I feel as though we can do to make at least one step in the right direction is talking. And I think that's something that we mentioned multiple times within this whole conversation. Just even if it's speaking with your family or people that you trust and feel close to, or even people that you've met recently and you may have had certain encounter with them that isn't the most ideal, just to address certain things so it won't happen again, and express how you feel. And if you had certain occurrences that had happened before, to really reach out and find at least someone to speak to about it, because holding things in doesn't always end out the best way.
Yeah, also similar to what Tiffany said, holding on to it won't make anything better. It actually just makes things worse. And just letting life pass by, you might just forgive them in a way. It might be like, okay, like that was in the past, but your past can catch up to you. And tell someone. That's the most important thing. It may be hard in the moment. Take your time, but telling someone is very important. Make sure those people like are punished and they learn their lesson. Make sure they don't hurt other people again, because by telling someone, you can also be saving a lot of other people from getting hurt.
And also being really aware of your environment. So if you're noticing that maybe like you're in a room and it's getting like really empty and maybe this guy is like coming really close to you, just knowing, like, I know it's kind of sad, but kind of just like knowing your way out, or ways to like get out of a situation. And always, like Najwa was saying earlier, knowing your boundaries. So you shouldn't be like super touchy or all up on someone if that's not where they want it to go. Knowing when no is no, and holding people accountable when no one's watching, even if it's just like guy to guy, girl to girl. You have to keep in mind that everyone's like feelings and everyone's expressions do matter in whatever environment you're in. So making sure that you're being open and saying, okay, no, I'm not comfortable with this.
And I like Gloria's point on like the terms of boundaries, knowing what makes you feel comfortable and what makes you feel uncomfortable, and don't try to change that for anybody. And also, be mindful of what you're doing with others. I feel like sometimes people, like when they first get to know you, they try to be like touchy to seem like they're comfortable with you. And it's kind of like, I like my personal space. I don't like when people, especially when I'm first meeting you, like touching all up on you. So, knowing those boundaries. And I also feel like educating people at a young age, like not as so young as like, a really young age where like they're still impressionable, but to an age where they can understand, whether it's, knowing what's inappropriate to be touched, or, knowing when to speak up about it or saying no, is really important. And I feel like when people know that from a young age, they can easily identify when they're uncomfortable in situations where they feel like they are, and when to speak up about something that happened to them where they feel like they were violated or sexually harassed.
I have a really unrealistic mindset where I always say I think health should be a full year course, like because there is so much ground to cover, and this is something that should be taught. Because, like we discussed previously, a lot of people don't know that they're sexually harassing someone or what the right way sexual assault is. But since that's like it's probably not going to happen, we really need to be the change that we want to see in the world, and not be afraid to have these uncomfortable conversations with our peers, our younger siblings, our older siblings, our parents. And because like misconduct isn't something that just happens in schools, it happens in the workplace, it happens on the street. And like at like what in sixth grade they show us the video about like sex and stuff, but and then you have 12-year-olds going into Almont thinking that it's okay to touch little girls' butts, like stuff like that. If you could address certain things, I feel like other things could be addressed as well to help us really progress as a society. But I feel like as individuals, we definitely need to, as Tiffany said, talk and have these conversations that might be hard or uncomfortable. And talking to guys right now, as a guy, you need to stop the narrative that it's not all men, because it really is you. It really is your friend. It really is someone that you know. And hold each other accountable for sure.
Also, talking about and educating everyone on it. The victim may not even know, like, wait, that was wrong, and may not know that they were sexually harassed or sexually assaulted. They might just brush it away. But talking and educating everyone on it is very important to make sure that the right people are punished and they learn and no one else gets hurt.
I wanted to speak to, and I haven't spoken a lot, but I wanted to speak to the media in which we consume and how that plays a role not only in pushing a narrative, but also silencing victims. For example, I think that a lot of sexually explicit sites, they do push the ideas of hypersexualizing certain groups of women, certain groups of men, and certain groups in the LGBTQ plus community. And because of that, people that do consume that type of media will go out and assume that those communities are theirs to assault and disrespect and sort of treat them as if they're not human. So in terms of sort of how Najwa was speaking to young 12-year-old kids who are coming into school touching young women's butts, it's also goes back to the media that you're consuming. When you are receiving a phone that basically has no restrictions, you're allowed to go to any site at any time and consume all types of media that will push the narrative that you can do this and that women like this when they most likely do not. And that pushes the narrative that people part of the LGBTQ plus community cannot experience sexual assault when they do. And because of that narrative that's pushed upon them, they're less likely to speak out about it. So I think that monitoring the media in which you consume, whether it be on a sexually explicit site and you see something that may seem wrong, I say report it. And also, if you monitor what your younger brothers, sisters, cousins are watching, monitor what you're watching yourself, what you're consuming, because that's going to sit in your mind and later on push certain narratives and certain ideas that things are okay when they really aren't.
Yeah, just to what Chelsea's last point was about like that self-evaluation, monitor what you're reading, what you're taking in, what your friends are saying, the people that you surround yourself with, because all of that is influencing what you think about the topic and what decisions you make. So self-evaluation and reflection is really important, especially when it comes to this topic.
Yeah, I was gonna say I definitely agree with Chelsea, because you brought up the point that like you can watch anything, you can read anything, and just that there's so many things on social media that we see, and there's just this algorithm. So as soon as you like things, it'll make like a constant feed, and then they'll just continue to show you these things. So you definitely need to make sure that you're aware of those things and you're reporting it, like Chelsea said.
Yeah, I also love the point that you made about a lot of sexually explicit sites and the narrative that they produce. And when people come into a setting or a space and they do something that was demonstrated in the media or on one of these sexually explicit sites that isn't well reciprocated by a partner, they're like shocked because they're like, well, that's how they did it on the video I just watched. And it's just like, that's not real. That's not how humans want to be treated. And like monitoring what you watch and understanding like a lot of times a lot of the stuff that's being mass produced to you in the media isn't always real. Like it's a lot of scripted, a lot of it's fake, and we're not fake. Like we're real people and we have real emotions and we want to be treated in a respectful manner. So I really like that point of like the media and how it reflects how we treat one another.
And just to add on to that, with the sexually explicit sites, I actually learned that some of the women who are being used within these sexually explicit sites, that they're actually victims of sex trafficking. So sometimes not only do we see that this is a result of sexual violence, but within the algorithms and within social media itself, that the people within these systems are actually being sexually exploited as well.
Yeah, and I heard that multiple sites took down hundreds of videos of underage people or people who are getting sexually assaulted off of these sites, videos of that off of their sites. You can easily see that yeah, on those sites before they took it down. So it's much more common than people think.
Yeah, and you definitely have to keep in mind your watching is actually support, and that's why they're making millions of dollars. So definitely cracking down on what are you watching, how is this really helping your community, your society, the benefit of yourself. So like the fact that this is inducing like human trafficking or working with underage children, which sometimes go like from the age of 5, like a 5-year-old, a mistreatment of a 5-year-old. So restricting those type of websites are actually something that many people are for, but then there's actually some people who are against.
And
Go ahead,
Chelsea.
I just wanted to speak to one more point because we were discussing intersectionality and the LGBTQ plus community. It may have happened a few years ago where there were 2 women on a bus, a couple, and a group of men, I believe it was teenage boys, came up to them and started bothering them and asking them to kiss for their entertainment and for their own pleasure. And these women, when they refused, they were beaten up. And after that, when we were discussing the intersectionality, I was reminded of that case because a lot of media that we consume sort of pushes the narrative that lesbian people are for the entertainment and for the pleasure of men, and that their lives and the way that they identify and the way that they present themselves and would like to live are simply for the pleasure and for the sexual satisfaction of men. So when I say watch your media, not only monitor your media, but also make sure that you highlight that these people are valid and that their experiences are valid, and that what they're going through is not normal, and what they're going through should not be entertainment for other people or sexual satisfaction for other people. So I just wanted to make sure that not only are you watching your media, but you're also making sure you're taking action, because we can't have these conversations and we can have these we can have these discussions, we can have these conversations where we're highlighting and educating, but if we're not actually taking action when these things happen, it really won't do much.
Chelsea, you brought up a really great point. And like, I feel like some people, they just fail to realize like they do have the power to do something. Like once you block the site, or once you try to advocate to get the video taken down, you are already taking steps to stop that sexual violence. And another thing that you brought up was this hypersexualization of like people in the LGBTQ community, especially like lesbian females. I know sometimes like you said, men feel like they're there for their enjoyment, and it's not just and they can't just live their everyday lives. So I feel like definitely people need to make sure that they have that call to action to really stop it.
Yeah, this brought up two major points in my head. One is the male gaze, obviously. And like, this isn't something that we see in like underground media. Like in mainstream media, we often see like women in the entertainment industry making out with girls, and they're all under contracts, they're all working under men, like, and it's really to push the male gaze, to push the male narrative, and that kind of pushes this idea of women's sexuality, or the attraction, woman to woman attraction, is just a phase, or it's just a ploy for male enjoyment and the male gaze, which is so false and kind of gross. And it's not liberating at all. It's not liberating in the way that we think it is. And that's a point that in mainstream media that is seen a lot. And another point that we see in the media is this narrative of women, characteristics of women that are very similar to the characteristics of a child, having a high sounding voice, or no body hair, or being tiny or petite and stuff, which is very common and also very gross. And this also gets pushed into sexual harassment, where a guy will come up to you and be like, "Why are your legs so hairy?" Like, ew. Like, things like that. Just like, because in the media we often see, like, whether it's underground media or mainstream media, this idea or this narrative that women have porcelain skin, that they have high-pitched voices, that they carry themselves this way, and the femme fatale is a fantasy. So we kind of need to be careful in what we consume that way. And I know that's a controversial topic, but it really is prominent that women are women, not children, and they have features of a woman and characteristics of a woman, no go like a woman, and that's really gross. So
Yeah, so similar to what Najwa said, women are sometimes held to these high standards that are similar to a child's like for men, like it's disgusting and it's unattainable, especially with bodies of women. But some standards are very thick thin or very bodacious and curvy with no cellulite. That's not obtainable. You know, bodies are bodies. At the end of the day, we're all beautiful.
Or sometimes different women are held at different standards. So if you like cover up too much, you're like, oh, why are you being so conservative or not showing off enough? Or then if a woman wants to like wear a bikini and, you know, body positivity, oh, she's a this, she's a that, she goes with all this men. No, she's not nothing. She's not what you want her to be. She's who she wants to be. You don't have to keep labeling women or putting women in like this box that they have to be this or they have to be that. They can be whatever they want to be.
Yeah, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Just quick. I think that the unattainable standards that women are placed at, and the boxes that we're put into, and the fact that we're not really seen as multidimensional human beings, that for centuries we've kind of, as women, been told that our lives center around male. We are supposed to cook, we're cleaning, and we are pretty much baby making machines. And now, as we move closer to modern day, we're finally kind of taking that liberation, and we're finally taking back all of the things that we're kind of centering our lives around other things. But the idea of that patriarchal society of the men being on top of us just simply being there for their satisfaction is kind of pushing back our freedom. So we're kind of, I think, in a way, having groups like Leading Ladies, having groups that are centered around women expressing themselves, is just taking more of a step towards liberating ourselves and centering ourselves around something else other than men and a male dominated society.
Okay, I completely agree with everyone. Another thing I wanted to add on when it comes to women and their physical appearances, whether it's like some women, like some girls, they grow up a bit faster than other girls. They get more curvaceous bodies, as Amy said, just at a faster rate. And they are a lot more idolized even at like a younger age, which is kind of off-putting at times, because it's honestly the weirdest thing, because then they kind of expect that for every other girl. And we also mentioned how that's a constant thing perceived in the media as well. And we all mentioned how that's not necessarily normal for every single girl, as well as putting into the fact that you can be of a certain size, but if you look more of the way that is perceived, not only within like the media itself, but like within the entertainment industry, whether it's like blockbuster movies of that sort. You know, I think we mentioned this can also go into like colorism, texturism, things of that sort. If a woman is thinner, like not as curvaceous, but she has lighter skin with a looser hair, she is more accepted. And sure, they'll still over sexualize her as much as they would like to. But it would be even worse towards darker skinned females and darker skinned women, I'm sorry, and women with more of a kinky type of hair. Another thing that I also wanted to mention was how women, we are put into this box and we can't really get out of it unless we help each other as well. Because since we're all taught like the same thing, that we are for the male gaze, women think that same exact thing for other women, and they would put other women down. And that's why we should constantly put out these empowerment groups that really bring us together and try and really uplift each other.
Thank you guys all for your input tonight. The conversations that we had were very important, especially to this topic. All of your inputs, all of the topics that you brought up definitely made a difference when it came to discussing this topic. And I hope everything that we addressed, and whether it was intersectionality or steps moving forward, is really, heard by our listeners and is used to address sexual harassment in the future.